So, John, we're here in the state-of-the-art recording studio that you built and you've run for, I'm guessing, nearly 40, 50 years now. Yeah, right? Is that right?
Not that long.
Not that long?
No.
Okay. But, as a musician,
A while.
Yeah, a while. But as a musician, audio engineer, you've got a lot of titles: producer, entrepreneur, and inventor. And now you've written a book. So you're an author of a new book. All these roles. So can you tell us, who is John Russell, and does he ever sleep?
Yeah, I left insomniac off the list, for obvious reasons. I'm just I'm someone who came from very simple beginnings with a lot of curiosity. And I think, the necessity of having to chart your own course and pretty much anything that you desired, you had to go out and find. It wasn't there for you. We didn't live in extreme poverty, but we had zero discretionary income. So that would lead you to something as simple as, I had a bicycle that my parents gave me for my 9th birthday. That was huge, in our neighborhood. So I got the bicycle and it was a rough neighborhood, and it didn't take long before it was stolen. And at that point, the parents, they were just as sad about it as I was, or somewhat. And so there was no opportunity to replace it. So at that point, what do? You go out and find discarded bicycle parts and you try to put it together, because there's no option, there's nobody to call.
Yeah. Other than you returning the favor of stealing someone else.
Stealing it back. Yeah. Well, it may have crossed my mind at that point, but I was a pretty good kid, so no. But anyway, so what happens is, you make a lot of mistakes, and I remember the wheels wouldn't roll because I had them, I took a wrench and just like cranked it down and things. But what happens is out of necessity, you learn that, you learn how to do things. And then what that does is it gives you this sense of self-confidence. Like, well, if I can do that, then maybe I could do this. So you couple that with the curiosity, the necessity with the curiosity, and you end up where I am.
So obviously, at some point, you got curious about how to make sound, and you got interested in music, or you got interested in something that's, that spurred you to want to be part of, an industry like, the record industry or something. How did that happen? How did you get from bicycles all the way to sound?
Yeah, well, cars came in between.
Auto,
because again, same thing. If we could have possibly afford a vehicle, and all the kids had the special wheels and the loud mufflers and and the fast cars. So we learned how to do things. I had always been a musician since I was very young, so that translated into the technology. Because the technology, I was fortunate to be around when the technology industry met, seduced, and married the music industry. So as that came around, things were a lot simpler. I have some clients now that'll say to me, like, how do you do this? How do you know all this? Mm-hmm. And I say, well, it's like being a 500-year-old doctor who never went to school. As the technological and the medical breakthroughs come through, you learn about them. And then because it's cumulative knowledge, you build off them. And so essentially what you see here is a culmination of learning how to take a microphone and plug it into a tape recorder and get sound out of it.
Right.
And then, the desire for excellence and everything else that comes as a result.
It comes along with it. And
for some people.
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave that one alone for now. But anyway, let's talk about the book. Let's start there, because of course the title of the book is Our Binary World and Its Effect on an Infinite Resolution Species, and then its subtitle is A Perspective on Our Existence Contrary to Science and Data. So that covers a lot of territory right there, and that's pretty expansive territory. First, can you define for those folks who are tuning in and don't know anything about digital and binary and analog and all the things that go into making sound recordings? Can you can you sort of give us your definitions of binary and infinite resolution to give us some context as to exactly what the book is really about?
Sure. Well, though I spent my life in the music industry and technology industry, the book uses a lot of the lessons I learned in that and applies them to basic living and humanity now. So it's not, the book isn't necessarily about just the facets of the binary world within technology, but it has to do with how we view things, how we perceive things. But to back up slightly there, so what binary is on and off. It's 1 and 0. It's yes and no. Okay, so binary is something either it is or it is not. Okay, so in music, let's look at time, for instance. Okay, so you have a second of time. Okay, now what happens in that second of time, all right, is what we as human species we react to. All right, the how we feel, how it affects us, how we reciprocate. Okay, and so there's a lot of things that go on in 1 second. All right, a lot. And so, okay, so let's cut that down to 1/50,000th of a second. Is there any less information that goes on between 0 and 1/50,000th? Well, that's where binary comes in. What binary is we've decided to map out and store things based on a series of dots. Okay, so think about, follow the dots, all right?
Right.
With the idea that if there's so many dots, then of course we're going to replicate the source accurately because, how many variables can you have? Well, the fact
So
is...
it makes up a full picture,
Exactly.
or a spectrum that allows you to perceive a picture of in this case, sound.
In this case, sound or visual.
Sure.
Or emotions. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the thing is that you have all these dots, and the question is a connection between one dot and another a straight line, or is there a subtle curve? Is there something in there that is being, let's say, filtered or eliminated for the sake of the limitations of the technology? So, okay, well, we broke it down to 50,000 pieces. Well, why don't you break it down to 50 million pieces? Oh, because we can't do that yet. Well, why not? Well, because technology isn't there. Okay, so why are you putting out something that is clearly has limitations and then claiming it to be as accurate as the initial source? Well, the reason for that is because that way we can map it and we can reproduce it. Well, what you're reproducing is not the authenticity of the source. You're reproducing what you say you can fit in 50,000 pieces.
So this reminds me what you just said about the dots and things being too large and having to sort of compress them or make them fit. You tell a great story that I think is truly a terrific illustration of what you're talking about, and that's okay. You've got a vase or a vase, and you've got a box, and you have to ship the vase in this box, but the vase is too big for the box. So what do you do? And this is, I think, this story that you tell about the vase and how you get the vase into the box sort of really illustrates well.
Well, the vase is, and I refer to it in the book as a handmade vase,
Right.
something that came from a human creation with no structure intended, no actual structure on an engineering sense.
Right.
Okay, so the vase is sort of a metaphor.
It's a metaphor, right?
For all things in nature that are not definable. Okay, it's not currency. You can do that in dollars and cents.
Right.
But a vase is something that has form, it has depth, it has a dimension that can't be quantified in dots and in numbers. Especially, I believe can never be quantified in numbers. I mean, you get into the God particle of that. That's another story. But I do believe that it's a limitation. So the box is a metaphor for modern technology, the ability to deliver information,
Right.
okay, and to convey information, and more importantly, to store information for the idea of replicating it at another time.
Right.
Okay, so so the idea in the book I talk about. So you have this vase, and you need to get it stored so that you could recreate it somewhere else. Well, the way you would do it, and think about digital, would be as if you took the vase and you made a grid, okay, vertical, horizontal grid, with as many lines as technology will allow, okay, and you essentially mark each square, every single square, and you label it, and you put it down and say, this square goes here, this square goes to this parameter, et cetera, et cetera. Now you take the vase and you cut it up into those squares, okay? Now you can fit that big vase into that little box, okay, which would be your hard drive or your data center or your cloud server, whatever it may be, okay?
Right.
Then you can take that box and those little data pieces, and you could feed them one small piece at a time down this tiny little pipeline, which would be either our internet or our modern, satellite
Streaming
transmissions.
services, things like this.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
All right. So basically, now you've taken this vase, which you're never going to deliver in one piece unless you're going to hire some third-party, delivery service. Okay. But you've brought it down to a thing where you can feed it in increments. And then on the receiving end, they take the increments, and theoretically, by using your map that you made when you broke everything into pieces, you rebuild it. With the notion that what you're going to get on the other side is,
The thing itself.
well, I mean, some people would be so bold as to say it's an identical,
Right.
image or a representation, identical representation. I mean, you'd have to be foolish to even consider that.
Right.
And the reason for that is because when you're cutting that vase up initially, you're losing pieces. There are little pieces of dust that go to the ground. There's tiny little nuances that are just going to be too small to be labeled, okay, and too innocuous to be identified. This piece of dust, we got a pile of dust here. Where'd it go? Did it go between piece number E54B or did it go, right?
Right. No. Understood.
So all of this is gone. I mean, it's like once you've cut this vase up, this is gone.
Right.
No one's taking that and bringing it to the other
It's
side.
on the cutting room floor.
It's gone.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right. So now you've rebuilt this on the other end, and you're professing that what you have on the other end is similar enough that the person who views it will get the same impact as they did if they saw the original vase.
Okay. So so if we were to if we were to think about this in one other sort of metaphorical term, on Star Trek, right? They would get into this transporter, and it would be like, "Beam me up, Scotty," and you would be reassembled. Theoretically, you would be reassembled at the end of whatever beamed you up, and you come back, to the ship again, and you get reconstituted. That's a fantastically utopian version of what you're talking about, but all of the particles could be assembled again and you would be real. What you're talking about, and this is, I think, what's interesting,
Is the fly.
is
The fly.
the fly. Go ahead.
Okay, that's what Jeff Goldblum. Remember Jeff Goldblum?
Yes, of
and
course,
who's
yes.
the woman he married, the lovely actress?
Gina Davis.
Gina Davis. Okay. And that's what he did. He was doing the transport and the actual story, The Fly. Now, mind you, these are way beyond before I was born.
Of course.
Right? You too, Jeff. I mean, somebody briefed you. I know this. Okay. But to the point, The Fly was the similar transportation thing, but the fly got into the chamber when he went, and then he ended up taking on certain DNA of the fly.
Right. So
and
they sort of cross-pollinated.
Yes,
in
exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
okay.
All right. So the fly was a takeoff on that. I mean, I don't know if was that an original H.G. Wells concept.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what the sort of trajectory of that narrative is,
but you're exactly right, though. It is a transporter. Think of the transporter.
Yeah, right. So, but here's the thing that I think is interesting about this metaphor that you set up with the vase and everything else. Like, okay, so we're missing some parts. We're missing and people would say, "Come on, it's dust. How important could it be?" But
right.
this is I think, one of the cruxes of the book, and that's that. Because the book is part treatise and it's part memoir, and it's almost, it's a manifesto at times. It's an unusual mix of subjective and objective elements. But your jumping off point about sound and how humans experience it, right? Largely through music, we're using as the metaphor, or as the vehicle here. So what about when people hear it at the other end of this and they're missing these components? What's so important about these little pieces of dust that, your argument is that they're very important, that those things that you're missing are really the things, to the point of, I believe you use the term biophysical responses, that what we're missing is a core element of really understanding something the way it's really meant to be versus the simulacra of it.
Right. Well, that's something that I was so fortunate to learn from my career. When you're in a room and you're tracking an album with I don't care if it's a major artist or if it's some local person. I mean, if the talent's there, the talent's there. Mm-hmm. With the mindset that's in place now, and unfortunately it becomes a process in place, you only need to perform a song once. Why do you have to perform? Why would you perform a song twice in a studio? You got the notes right. And I could tell you that I've been with bands and some very just unbelievably talented people where they might play the song 10, 15 times over a period of 2-3 days, and one of them does something. There's something happens. Mm-hmm. People call it the magic, whatever you want to call it. Okay, the vibe is there, the aura is there, and you get chills. You actually will feel like a chill happen because it just grooves in a way. Now, that's just with the fundamental basic tracks, mm-hmm. Because in a lot of the pop songs we do, obviously you put down your drums, your bass, and your basic guitars first, and then everything's additive. Mm-hmm. So if you take that, where you're getting your really emotionally impactful basic tracks, and then you're taking that same method for every single track that's laid on it. I mean, okay, so we have this track now. Does that mean the guitar player plays it once? No, you start all over again. Then the vocalist. So at the end of it, you get something that, it'll bring you to tears, or it'll make you aggressive, or it'll make you want to dance. Mm-hmm. But that in itself is living proof of how many variables mm-hmm. there are. And, why do we need to, with the modern technology now, everything is, it is pretty much done with computers. That's the whole argument of holistic versus technological.
Sort of, we can loop this, we can make this perfect, we can quantize this, we can...
It's called lifeless precision.
Right. Okay. Right.
And the reason why it's lifeless precision is because you're resolving something to a predetermined point. So let's say you got a groove, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what's called quantizing when the mm-hmm. drum machines first came out, the original right. Linn machine and the Roland DMX and even the Fairlight CMI. So you would quantize. That means if you hit a note, it's going to move it to whatever point is closest. Mm-hmm. That's not where you intended. So if you had a drummer, somebody like Steve Gadd or even Steve Smith from that band Journey, or any of those, and they would hang back on certain parts, and then they would push other parts, and that gives you an emotional reaction. It gets you to where you're on the train, you're on the move,
you're breathing with it.
Great, Jeff. Great.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Yeah,
right.
You're breathing with it.
Right.
Well, that resolution's infinite.
Right. Okay.
It can go in an infinite amount of places.
Right.
Not so. Because in binary, it's got to go either here or here. It can't go in between.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying at this point, we're starting to get a clearer picture. You're reassembling this for us in real time here. But that brings me back to the subtitle of the book. The subtitle is A Perspective on Our Existence Contrary to That of Science and Data. Now, science and data are crucial to understanding existence in the world around us, right? We're not going to argue that like science and data are bad things. I don't think that's your argument. But why contrary? And I think some of what you're getting at is probably the seed of that. If this, if this can't be moved from here to there, explain that concept a little bit. It because something won't conform to a data-driven model, it stays outside of that. Like we were saying, it breathes or it does whatever it's going to. It's the thing that motivates you. So, can you give us an example of something from your past, say in recording, or what you've been a project you were working on in which something was missing or something was there that you were trying to capture but couldn't, or something came out of that was completely and utterly unquantifiable when you looked at that as the parameters?
Oh, well, that question's twofold, and I'll just
Okay.
quickly go with the first half. Now, science and data are absolutely necessary. They're necessary in any civilization. Okay, science essentially is a search for origins. Okay, whether it be our origins as a species or the origin of a metallurgic process. If I worked in forensic audio, we've done a lot of crime scenes. So I have an absolute respect for science. Data is perceived as being truth. I think the problem now, or currently, a better word, is that data is perceived as truth. And data was never intended to be truth. Data is nothing more than a probability based on the characteristics that are
Sort
input.
of a supporting mechanism to a larger.
Well, think of
sort
it
of
like
conversation.
it's like someone giving you basic directions,
Right.
okay,
Okay.
without giving you exact, durations, how long you're on this road, what the exact mileage is. It 5 miles or is it 4 miles, 720 feet, and blah blah blah.
Right.
Okay, but what's happened is it's taken on such a sense of authority that it rules out all of the parameters that might completely change its outcome. I mean, the fact with data is no matter what the data says, no matter what, and I will take this to my grave, no matter what, if you change one parameter, you could throw that data result off by 180 degrees. Okay? And
Right.
great scientists know this, and great data analysts know this. So that's why it's always ruled as a probability. It's like a general roadmap to get people started. And as you go, if you're truly a professional and you're truly passionate about what you do, that process helps you increase the amount of factors in the data so that it hones you in. Okay, it's generally honing in. And now science, the same thing. Science is a search for origins. There's no such thing as settled science, which a term you see that in our vernacular now. And the reason being is because what science does is it looks for an origin, which when it finds, it looks for the origin of the find, which when they find that, they look for the origin of that. And that's what's called a God particle. When you find the origin of something and you don't know what the origin of the find is, you label it a God particle, which means, well, God made it. I mean, it's not a religious statement. It's just a thing like, we'll get to that when we can.
It's a way of sort of being able to articulate something that you can't, the ineffable, if you will.
Yeah, it's an admission that you've come a great way, but there's still more to go. And it's what makes women, humanity great is this curiosity that like the search for origins never ends, even at the subatomic level. Okay, because every couple of years you'll see somebody publish a report where they've isolated a new, origin point for something. Okay, so that's where the science and data comes in. Contrary to science and data is the fact that there are things that can't be measured, emotional reactions, human feelings. We have this big thing about AI now, okay, and everyone's afraid of AI. Well, the fact is that humans we're a computation in progress. Every single movement. What you and I are doing right now is going to change the way we think about things, even to the slightest bit. So unless you have something living, which is continually taking on new experiences, new information, supporting some preconceived notions and tearing other ones down, that's what formulates who we are. And the idea that we can eliminate that magic that we do as human beings,
or to the opposite degree, capture something that's not really there.
yeah, exactly. Right. You can't.
Right. If you go to the other side of that.
So in the studio, if someone did describe it, oh, really, it was cool. Okay.
No, well, there's one story that I'm thinking of from the book that I remember, and I don't know if this is going to be.
Thank you for reading it, Jeff.
Well, you're welcome. I like to read things before I actually ask questions about them.
Is that the only reason?
You tell a story about being asked to sort of intervene.
Oh.
In a there's a recording that's been made by, and we don't even have to get into the artist, but if you want to talk about the artist that we're talking about, very, very famous singer who records something, and you were brought in the post-production phase to sort of help the recording out, because the producer of this, or whoever's going to release it, feels as if it's not exactly a perfect performance, and they want you to sort of, fix it. Yes,
I
exactly.
love that.
Yeah. Fix the traits of something that everybody sort of loves. In
They
a
don't
way.
know they don't know why they love it.
Right. Okay.
That's
There
the
you
thing. It's like saying, I like to cook and things like that.
Sure.
You can just do this. No, you don't just do something like that, because the impact isn't the same. But I digress. So yes, okay. So I'm working on a pretty high profile artist. I mentioned it in the foreword of the book. It's part of the thing. Okay. And so they were like a blues artist, bluesy. And, so you get that, kind of thing where you hit a note. It's like, I want, as opposed to I want,
Yeah.
Okay. And so there's a lot of that. And what happens is the note doesn't quite hit right on the execution.
Right.
It hits and it glides
Comes
its way
up
into
underneath it.
So most people will sense that with tension, because something in them says, it's like watching somebody, go to make a basketball thing, and that ball just, or a golf putt. That's even a better one. It's like,
Right.
Okay. So that tension, boy, that's a good one. That's a good metaphor. That tension is like watching a golf putt. And then the joy is when it locks in. Mm-hmm. But the tension is part of the style of the singer. Okay? So when they do that, they do it intentionally, and it gives you this it makes them fun to listen to. Right? It makes it sexy. Sure. It makes it mysterious. Mm-hmm. Okay, and this artist is known for this. Mm-hmm. So what they wanted me to do is they wanted me to get rid of those ramp ups.
Right.
They wanted that thing to go from the golf club to the hole.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
I'm like, no. And I get paid to do this, so I then had to go, okay, and we did it, and it's like watching somebody bang a thing, and it's like watching a pool game instead of a golf putting.
Right. Right.
Or even pool's the same way. It's ball just slide and bang.
Yes, but I think what's interesting about that story is that even in situations where you're dealing with the magic, or you're dealing with an industry or a circumstance in which you're capturing something as it is, sort of changing it or taking it. There are distortions that creep in the process, and this is one of the things that you get at in the book about how these things become abstractions, and then it sort of takes away for the end user, say the listener, who's used to and welcomes and is wanting that sort of tension, as you call it.
Right. But Jeff, what's happened now is we're into a generation who's never experienced it.
Okay.
They're getting so, and I say this because I have two children who, they're pretty bright kids and they have a lot of friends and we're very much involved with them. And especially what I do, they're enamored about what I do. And so I'll play them things and they won't even pick up on it because it's so foreign to them. So that gets into, well, why is it? Why is it that this producer forced me to do this? Why is that? I don't think by any means they were a bad person, had any nefarious intents.
Right, sure.
But it was clearly because they're so conditioned into looking at certain things to either fall in the groove or not, that anywhere outside that comfort zone gave them a sense of fear, a sense of tension. They didn't like tension. They didn't, because who knows, maybe because the world has got so much tension as it is, the last thing they want to do is find more of it.
Right. And your argument would be, though, if I'm understanding, because there are a lot of levels to this. Your argument would be, but that's the thing, like eliminating the possibility of that is the thing that's affecting us negatively. When I said before about the biophysical response, that by filtering all these things out, by desensitizing people to the way that they really hear something or what they're capable of hearing, that we're doing ourselves a huge disservice as a species.
Oh, without a doubt, we're eliminating things that give us serenity. We're eliminating the feeling, like when I was a child, that idea of you have this tension over, you have a task that you have to take care of. But when that task is completed, you get this sense of euphoria, but you also get this sense of confidence that you're capable of turning tension into joy or into serenity. And music did that for all of us. So many great songs were written with the idea that, okay, yeah, things might be bad, but look where they end up. There's this inspiration that gets completely lost when you avoid looking at, I don't want to say the reality because, that could be subjective.
That's subjective. Yeah.
But if you get used to the idea that things, most of the book, Jeff, is about the fact that things aren't always what you think they are. And if you have enough faith in yourself and you have enough desire and you have enough optimism, you're going to find yourself in that place.
Right.
If you're willing to go through the process. And the process is, don't walk away from it if it's bringing you tension or if it's going against what you think, because it may end up in the best place, better than where you think you're going. So with music, you have people listening to things that are so incredibly predictable that their lives are they're minimized by what they could achieve if they took a little risk.